Hi, today I'm going to do a video on coral porterweed. What you're taking a look at here is my coral porterweed plant that I've had in a container for several years now. And what I wanted to try and do was see if I can propagate this, which basically means take cuttings off of this plant, use the cuttings to grow other plants and grow more of these, because I absolutely love this plant. I'm trying to come in close to show. I don't have too many blooms on it right now, but I did find one right here. These long stalks that are on this plant produce little flowers, and again, porterweed comes in different colors. The one that I have is the coral, but there's also like a purplish color. If I can get my camera to focus, I was going to try and get a better shot of the bloom, but the camera might not be able to focus in on it. It's so small. The blooms are tiny on them, but the one thing I'll say about the blooms is hummingbirds absolutely love them. And normally, especially when there's been rain or when the temperatures cool off a little bit, these long stalks will be covered in those blooms. This is a plant that blooms on and off pretty much for most of the season. But anyway, I'm going to take some cuttings. What I'm going to look for is something that's not very long. Like I'm looking at this stalk here. I'm trying to find a stalk that doesn't have the bloom ends on it yet, because I don't want to lose the blooms. I'd rather not cut that off of the plant. I'm going to try and find some stalks that don't have those and use those to cut, and we'll try and propagate them and see if we can make some more plants. So if you notice, I found a stalk that I'm going to take a cutting off of. This is just a short, maybe 5-inch cutting. There's no bloom ends on it yet, so it's just a healthy looking branch, but it's nice and small, and that's what you want. Is you don't want to take a cutting off of something that's going to be too big. So all I'm going to do is try and get my scissors on this, but just very simple, nothing big. And again, you're taking something off of the plant that's not really giving you anything that you're going to miss at this point. But I'm going to get one more about this size, and then I'll show you what we want to do next. Okay, so all I've done is taken some potting soil in a small little container, simple regular potting soil for containers, and then these are my 2 cuttings. And all I'm going to do with these, I'm not soaking them in water, not doing anything. I just literally took them off the plant about 2 minutes ago. I'm dipping them in take root rooting hormone, and I'm basically just dipping them in there, and then I just kind of tap them on the sides to tap off any kind of excess, to where you just have a little bit of a coating, and then I'm just going to smack it right in the middle of the pot. So we'll do the next one. Take the cutting, dip it in the rooting hormone, and dip it pretty deep. And then once you've got it in there, again, just tap some of the extra off the side, and then we're going to just pop it right down there in the container. So you can see now what the next step is. You want to get those cuttings nice and wet. I don't go to a faucet or a hose or anything. I just use a mist bottle, but I definitely spray them down enough to where the entire container of soil is saturated and dripping out of the bottom, to where you know every single layer of that soil has got moisture on it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Ziploc bag and wrap it around the tops of each of these plants. The idea is you want to create this greenhouse effect. Get the plastic bag around them, build up humidity within the plant, keep it out of the sun, put it in a spot that's outdoors but in the shade, and just give it a week or two and see what the plants do. What should happen is the moist soil, the heat from being outside, and the bag around the plant will develop moisture. Again, creates that greenhouse effect, and the rooting hormone with these cuttings should start the development of roots, and then hopefully we'll have 2 new plants to go plant somewhere else in a bigger container. So we'll check them again in about a week. So I mentioned I would check these again in about a week. I just wanted to show you again, just a shaded little area, no direct sun, but it's bright, so it will be getting some indirect light. And these plastic bags that are around the plants allow for the water to drain out of the bottom, but do not allow for the top to dry out. So, you know, if I don't check this again for a week, that soil is still going to be moist. You know, that bag is going to develop humidity, and it's going to keep everything inside of the bag nice and moist and from drying out. So everything's set. I'm going to leave it like it is for a week, and then we will follow up and check them in 7 days and see how they're doing. So it's actually been just about 2 weeks, and I'm getting ready to, I've already taken that plastic bag off of one of the plants. The other one I still have it on. I just thought I would show that's kind of what it looks like. You know, when I put the bag on, I leave the bottom open to where it can drain any water or moisture that builds up in the plants. But other than that, I just keep the bag around it, you know, nice and loose. And then, you know, there's a little bit of, if you can tell at the bottom, I keep a little bit of the bag open where there is some airflow that can come in and the plant can get air, but for the most part, it's sitting in there and just staying nice and humid. But anyway, now that it's been almost 2 weeks, you can tell the plants are doing well. You know, I haven't looked at them to see if there's any root development, but I can tell that cutting is not dying in any way. The leaves still look green, the plants look healthy. So now that I'm removing the bags off of them, basically the next step is I'm going to go ahead and put them into a location where they can start getting a little bit more sun, and then hopefully they'll start showing me some new growth and you know, start getting larger, start developing new leaves. And once I see that happening, I know I've got good solid roots that are developing, and I can go ahead and transplant them into a larger container. But I'll show you for now what I'm going to do to kind of get that next step started. So you can kind of tell what I've already done. I took that cutting that was in the pot and I've set it up in the center of the pot that I'm eventually going to want this plant to grow into. You'll notice I've got some other cuttings that are already starting around the perimeter of the pot. Those are going to be kind of my spiller plant, and then here in the center is going to be my porterweed, which is going to be my focal plant. But all I did was carve me out a little section of the pot and just taken that existing cutting just like it was and sat it in there. And the reason I'm doing that is because those roots that are developing in this cutting right now, they're so young and tender. I really don't want to pull this plant out and transplant it to something larger. I would rather just leave it exactly like it is, go ahead and put it in the spot that I'm hoping it's going to grow into, let it get established and acclimated in that spot, and then once I can see new growth and that the plant is doing well there, then I will simply remove this pot and just transplant the whole plant into this hole eventually. So for now, we're going to set it up just like this. I'll show you real quick the other one. I've already pulled it out over here and gotten it set up as well. So here's the other one, and kind of an identical setup on the other side. But I'm going to leave it just like this for a few weeks, see how these cuttings develop, and then once they start showing me that they're doing well in this spot and starting to outgrow this pot, I will transplant them into the larger pot, and we'll take a look at them then. So it's been 11 days. I thought we would follow up and see how these cuttings are doing. You can tell on this one, it's got a little bit of growth coming up in the middle of the cutting, which tells me that it's, first of all, it's definitely still alive and it's showing signs of growth, which is a good sign. On the other one that I had, it's doing great. You can tell this one is really looking good. So I am going to go ahead today to get these out of these plastic containers. And then you can tell, if you look at the bottom of that, the roots are starting to come out of it. So it's ready to go into this hole. I'm going to get some fresh potting mix put in there, and we're going to take this out of the container and go ahead and put it in its permanent spot and let it continue letting those roots actually start growing into the pot. And the plant obviously is going to be very happy with that and have the ability for the roots to start spreading out, and the plant should get much larger. So let's go ahead and get these things out and get them potted into their new homes. We've got good root development. You can see the roots coming out of the bottom. All I'm going to do is take a handful of good potting mix, nice fresh potting mix, well draining, put it in the bottom of this hole, and then go ahead and slide this plant, just give it a little squeeze, slide the plant out, and there's a better look at the roots. So you can tell it's ready to go into a larger spot. Now, some people would maybe say plant it in like one pot up to let those roots continue to develop. Again, this is a cutting. It didn't cost me anything. Normally, I think as long as you're putting it in a spot where the plant seems like it's been happy, I really don't think it's an issue to go ahead and put it in the spot that you want it to grow in. But all I'm going to do is just kind of loosen these roots up just a little bit and you know, try not to disturb it too much. Just loosen them up a little bit, make sure they've got some room to spread, and just go ahead and lightly sit it into its new spot. And then I'll pack this down, get it level with its surroundings, and then I will do a follow-up again in a couple weeks, and we'll see how it's doing in its spot. Okay, so it's been about 2 months since I started this cutting project with coral porterweed, and look at how tall this cutting has already gotten. And the second one that I started over here is doing almost just as well. Not quite as tall, but doing very well. So again, this is the coral variety of porterweed. What I want to show you in the background here, I have a blue porterweed. You know, I mentioned that they come in different colors and varieties. I'm going to try and come in and get you a close-up of what the blooms look like on these. I've been very happy with every porterweed that I've had. I will say the blue one, if you notice, it tends to stay a little bit smaller. I mean, I've got it in a pot and it's pretty much topped off probably around 3 or 4 foot. You can tell this cutting that I've done, it's just at 2 months old and it's already taller than the blue porterweed. So keep that in mind if you're picking a porterweed and you want to experiment with this plant. If you've got plenty of space to work with, you might want to go with the coral variety. But if you have a smaller area that you're working with, the blue one probably works better. And again, they've been equally as hardy. I've had no issues with either one of them. The other thing I want to point out with porterweed is it can be invasive in some areas. So it does self-seed. I haven't had to fight too much of a battle with new ones coming up in other places, but it is considered invasive in some climates. But anyway, hopefully this shows you how easy it is to propagate porterweed and gives you a little bit of an idea of the different colors. If there's any questions that I did not answer in this video that I can answer, please feel free to ask them. And if you thought the video was good or helpful, I would love it if you could give me a thumbs up and subscribe to maybe catch some of my future videos. But anyway, thanks for watching and happy gardening. Take care.